Cherry Hill Farms. Today I'm in the kitchen because it is way too cold to be outside. Eric has already gone out and checked on all the animals, and he had to bring the rabbits' waters inside because they were frozen solid. He said all the water outside is frozen. I think it is like, it feels like 6 degrees outside, but probably in the low teens this morning when they got up. Anyway, so I'm going to be in the kitchen today, and I am going to make a cake that my grandmother used to make for holidays every single year. So this cake that I'm going to make, it's called a lane cake, and I don't know if any of you have ever heard of it before, but my grandmother used to make it. Fryer, we're watching the grand dog today. Fryer, what are you doing? Stop that nonsense. Anyway, oh, that's Colonel's tail hitting the camera stand. My grandmother used to make this cake all the time for the holidays, and it's called a lane cake. And I don't really know what other people call it, but it's one of those old recipes that when I was little I really didn't like it, but as I grew older I come to love it. And so I asked her one day how to make it, and it's kind of time consuming a little bit because she didn't use bagged coconut. She always bought a whole coconut, and as you can see I have one here. I've already busted it up and all, but so I'm working on, I'll show you how I do this. So she uses real coconut, and that's what's challenging, and I've been working on it already. But if you've never busted a coconut before, Colonel, I'm not going to give you anybody. You notice coconut has, they usually have 3 holes in them, and so what I usually do, the tools that you will need for this is a screwdriver and a hammer. And of course a knife. But I went outside and I hammered 2 holes in the little dots that the coconut has. And the reason I did 2 is because if you do 1, the juice won't drain out. So I did 2 to create a little suction where the juice came out, and I drained all the coconut milk out of the inside the coconut. And then, of course, you just take your hammer. I went out on the porch, and I hammered it and cracked it. And then what you do is basically you just spend your time in here. You can see that on the coconut, I'll show you, let me come in close. There's a layer here, and then there's the hard outer shell. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get that off and get all the meat in there so to come out. And once it comes out, it has a thin layer, and this is the tedious part. Some people say, I don't want to, fool with that, but there's just something about doing it this way that just brings back a lot of memories for me. And so I work on here just getting this coconut separated, and the topping on this cake is coconut, raisins, pecans, sugar, and eggs. And then, of course, in the end, you add a brandy or a moonshine or some kind of liquor to the top of it. Of course, you cook the alcohol out of it, but I'll show you that when we get there. So I'm just going to work right here and getting this peeled and get all the coconut ready and the raisins ready and everything. And I'll show you how I do all that. I'm going to grind all that together here in just kitchen is a love kitchen, so I keep it real here on the property, on the hill in my kitchen. And it is full of love in here, as there are things laying out ready to be prepared for Christmas and all that. But anyway, so what I'm going to do right now, I've got all my coconut cut up and the shell cut off of it now, and you can rinse it and get all the trash off of it and stuff like that, if you want. So anyway, what I'm going to do now, I don't know if any of you've ever seen this thing. Some people say, well, why don't you just use a blender and chop it up? Well, I can. I can, but this is brings back great memories of using this thing with my grandmother and my dad. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and, well, these are stuck together. Get my icing stuff together, because once I start baking my cake, I do not want to be distracted by anything else. I'm going to go ahead and get this icing ingredients ground together. I'm not going to cook it right now. I'm just going to get it ground together. But so on the icing ingredients, the filling part, you know, it calls for a heaping cup of pecans, a heaping cup of raisins, a heaping cup of fresh coconut. And I'm going to grind all of these together first. And then when it's time, we'll add the other ingredients. But right now I want to do this so that when I started on the batter, that I wasn't distracted in any way. So anyway, get all my stuff together. I do have great memories. One of the last memories of this was I made this with my dad, and he supervised the entire thing. There's probably some pictures floating around somewhere, but anyway. So, okay, so I think I have all of my filling ingredients here. And so, let's see, I haven't done this in so long. It's going to be crazy. So, I'm going to just take pieces of coconut and break them up in here. And then I'm going to do some pecans. And then I'm just going to kind of rotate things in there. And then I'm just going to turn my wheel. And it's going to grind it together. Kind of blends all this together. And I'll do the same again. I'll put some more coconut in. Usually there's two people here. One's adding and one's turning. But Stumpy is gone with Eric to get stuff for smoking bacon. So they're going to be doing that today too. So. But I think I need to loosen this and slide it away from the cabinet. There we go. And see, it just kind of blends the raisins and the pecans and the coconut all together. I'll drop some more in there. Keep going until I get them all done. If you have a counter that this clips to that's a little bit more stable, that would work, but my counter lip is a little too big for it to work, so I have to do it on this little TV stand. Uh-oh. No, little buddy. Y'all got to get ground together. So this is one of those old recipes that my grandmother made. And all, but it is rich. I was telling my uncle I was making it for the holidays, and he's like, gross. And I'm like, you don't like it? And he was like, it's too rich. And so I was like, well, I'm sorry. And Stubby said that's less competition he has to fight to eat it. So, but just about got this done. And my grandmother always said fresh coconut worked best. That's why she never used bag coconut. So I always remember that when when I would get the stuff to make this. I keep coconut here all the time. It's a staple here. But I've not ever veered away from the recipe. I always remember Granny saying, the fresh coconut's just the best. So I'll always go buy fresh coconut, and I'm making a mess. A big mess. Okay, so now that I've gotten all of the filling ground, and I've got all my ingredients measured out, we're going to go ahead and start mixing. But first I have to sift my flour, my salt, and my baking soda. The recipe calls for that. So it's 3.5 cups of flour. I've got that measured out here, and that's not going to go well. So I'll get another little measuring cup, and we'll do it a little at a time so I don't make a mess. Granny says sift it 3 times. So I'm going to do what Granny says. So it'll be just like Granny's. We'll get this all sifted. So, what are you making for Christmas this year, for the holidays? Do you have any fun recipes? That you make? That's full. So I'll tell you what I might have to do without making a mess. This is a nice sifter, but it's just not like your old sifters. So I think I'll just do it like this and let it sift in there. Okay, so the recipe calls for us to sift this flour, baking powder, and salt 3 times. And will be my 3rd time, so it's sifted together. Once we get it sifted, then I'm going to take a cup of butter and 2 cups of sugar, and I'm going to blend that real good until it's fluffy, light and light. So I've got my 2 sticks of butter in. Well, not yet. They're right here. They're soft. I set them on the stove. Add my 2 sticks of butter here. And what's unique about this recipe, I'll have to show you in just a minute, is I don't use regular cake pans to bake them in. There's my 2 cups of, my cup of butter and my 2 cups of sugar. Right there. Okay? Lock that down. Get that going and blended together. So, let's turn this up and let it get right. Ooh. Get that sugar and butter blended together until it's light and fluffy. This cake is going to be thin layers. And So I've got my butter and my sugar cream together. And now what it calls for you to do, your sifted flour, baking powder, I keep wanting to say baking soda, baking powder and salt. It's sifted here. It's 3.5 cups of sifted flour, 3.5 teaspoons of baking powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And that's all in here. And what we're going to do is we're going to add alternately the flour and the milk. It calls for a cup of milk. So I am going to start adding alternately, starting with the flour and ending with the flour, the milk, and the flour. So I'm just going to add this alternately until I get it all incorporated. I want to end with my flour. So and I will probably add more milk just because I'll see what it looks like after I get my egg whites in. Gotten all the milk. Just going to add the rest of this flour. And it's pretty thick. Okay. That's mixed in. But now what I need to do is I need to fluff my eggs. Because that's the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fold in my egg whites. But I want them to be lightly fluffed. So I have my little manual. I'm pulling out all the vintage stuff here today. A little manual. I'm just going to lightly fluff these a little bit. You can do this with a fork, whatever, but I'm pulling out all the old stuff. Granny's stuff. Granny's KitchenAid, Granny's Whisk, you know, Granny's Recipe. So, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn this on stir. Get out my little spatula. Clean off my walls here. And one thing Granny taught me is you don't want to over bake your layers because they'll be dry. And so sometimes I've made this and overcooked my layers. So that's why when I'm making this cake, I try not to have anything else going on. Because I don't want it to be dry. So I've got my lightly fluffed egg whites. I'm going to fold them in. And I need a tablespoon of vanilla. So while that's mixing in, I'll add that. Just going to let that incorporate a little bit while they work it. Let me see. I hope I have wax paper. Oh, and I probably do not. So, this is what's unique. I don't know how many of you have ever baked in these. I love cooking with cast iron. But I usually do thin layer cakes with my little pancake cast iron pans. The key to this, though, is you got to spray your pan and use wax paper. Well, I don't have any wax paper today. I just have parchment paper. So I'm going to sit my pan down here, get me some circles drawn out, and cut me some circles to go in each one of these. And I don't know how many layers I'll get. We'll see. So right now I have 4. So I'm going to get 4 pieces out. And we'll see how many I make. But it's not real thin. I might add a little bit more milk to make it thinner. But didn't you know? So we'll see. So I've got my circle drawn on there. I don't know if you can see it with my marker. I'm just going to cut these out and have them ready. Maybe I got it. Okay. So spray my pans. I usually use the kind that has flour in it. But I don't have it today, so I use the original. So I'm just going to layer these in here in the pans, making sure that all the edges are covered. And I'm going to spray the top of the parchment paper as well, so the layers don't stick. Now, trying to decide on, I'm thinking I want to add a little bit more milk just to make it a little bit more thinner. I don't want it too thin. Let's see how that does. Remember what I said, a lived-in kitchen is a loved kitchen. That's what I said. That's exactly what I said. A lived-in kitchen is a loved kitchen. So, let me see. Yep, that's loose enough for me. Got all the ingredients in it. I'll try to put the recipe in the comments or in the description box down below. These won't be super thin, which will be good. Maybe I'll get I don't think I want 8 layers, because if they thicken up like I think they will, 4 might be enough. So we'll see what we have. So I'm just going to do a measuring cup in each one. So many memories. I know I talk about that all the time, but I'm a sentimental person. This is what makes me happy, is doing things that I did with my dad and my grandmother. And my mother cooked. She just wasn't much of a, I don't know. I mean, she provided meals for us. She just wasn't a huge, spend a lot of time in the kitchen. She had 4 kids and a husband to feed, and so it was, let's hurry up and get it prepared, and so we can sit down and eat. And so I know y'all don't hear me talk a lot about my mom. We always pick at her because she can't get on high. You know, we call it Genobifying, but we love her, and there are certain things that she does that she cooks that's good, and all, but most of my cooking skills I learned from my grandmother, which was my dad's mom. And so my dad would get in there with my grandmother and help her, especially in the later years. And so those are the fondest memories that I have of being in the kitchen. And I didn't do it until I was older and married. I wished I'd done a lot more when I was younger, and appreciated it. I guess that's why we kind of started our YouTube channel, is so that our kids could have something to go back to if they wanted to remember how we did stuff on the farm. So it looks like I'm probably going to get 5 or 6 layers. So I'm going to spread this out in the pans so that they'll be all the same size and they'll bake evenly. And we'll put them. It goes in a 350 oven. And once they come out, I'm going to use the coconut milk, and I'm going to brush each layer with coconut milk to help seal in the moisture. Let them cool completely, and as I'm layering the cake, I'll put that coconut milk on it, brush it on each layer. So, get that even. I'm going to swab from this one. It turns out good, as I remember it. I got Briar here. He's watching me. He's wondering, what is Nana doing? What is Nana doing? He's got his ears all cocked over to the side. He's a-wondering. He's a-wondering. No, what he wants is a tiny morsel to fall on the floor. Him can't have human food. His daddy and mama would kill Nana for feeding him table food. Okay, so we bang these down. Get on. Okay, I'm going to put them in the oven at 350. I'm going to let them go until they're little spongy. I don't want them to be golden brown or anything like that. I'm going to keep a close eye on them. And when they're spongy in the middle, I'm going to take them out. Because if I let them cook till they're golden brown, they're going to be too dry. So, you know, get them all in here. I have to put probably 2 on top and 2 on bottom. Okay, I think that this first round of cake layers are done. I'm going to take them out and show you what I'm talking about. When I say take them out when they're spongy, that one's not really spongy, but it's browning on the underside. I'm a little afraid to let it go longer. Let me check these others. That one's probably more done. I'm going to let it come on out. They'll continue to cook as they come out. I'm going to let them go a little bit longer. A little bit longer. So this one is starting to turn on the bottom. So I don't want it to get it too dry. It is a little springy to the touch. So we'll let this one out, let those cook a little bit longer. And we'll see what we have when they come out. This one come out of the pan. See how pretty that is? I'll let that be cooling over there. And I'm going to go ahead and get my last layer in the oven. Let's see. Looks like I'm going to have about 5 layers, which will be fine. This is thickened up as it sat here. So, yeah, these are starting to brown. I don't want them to get any more brown. Yeah. Okay, I got my other layers out. This one cooked a little long, but maybe it won't be. It's not too far gone, maybe. But I still have one more in there cooking. I'm going to leave it in there and let these start cooling. I'm going to put them over here on the cooling rack. Okay, now we're going to make our filling for this lane cake. I've already showed you how I mulched up our heaping cup of pecans, heaping cup of raisins, and a heaping cup of the fresh coconut. And that's ready here. I'm going to melt a cup of butter. I've got it going here melting. And I'll add 2 cups of sugar. And I'll let that melt here. I'll add the sugar, stir it in. I'll add a little bit of milk. And I'm going to cook it until it thickens. And once it thickens, of course, you've got to stir it constantly. Because once you add these 7 yolks of eggs, you don't want them to separate. You want them to stay. And that's your thickening agent, your eggs are. So I'll add a little bit of milk. I'll keep it stirred. I'm going to cook it until it gets thick, stirring constantly. Then I'll add the pecans, the coconut, and the raisins to it, stirring that together. And then you add a 1/4 cup of whiskey. And the whiskey that I use is moonshine. So we'll put that in last. We'll cook it a little bit to cook the alcohol out of it. But you can use brandy or whatever whiskey of your choice. I've just always had moonshine on hand. And we'll use it in this recipe. So waiting on the butter to melt, and then we'll add the other ingredients. So I've added my sugar. I'm gonna let that sugar melt. Add a little bit of milk. Add the rest of my milk. I'm out of milk. I need to milk my cow. So let this heat up. I'm going to add my eggs one at a time. So I have 8 egg yolks, but I only want 7 of these. So I'll just add all the eggs. The key to this is keep it stirred. You look down in there. You just keep it stirred because you don't want your yolks to cook separately. You want it to create a thick layer. Okay, I got this thicker, about as thick as it's going to get, I think. I'm going to add my raisins and pecan mixture to it. Mix it in, let it cook a little bit. Okay, got my moonshine. It calls for a 1/4 cup, but I'm going to do 1/8 of a cup. And see, I'll taste it. Yeah, I'm not going to add any more moonshine. That's enough. So, we're going to get over here and get ready to ice this cake. Okay, all my layers are cooled. I'm just going to start adding them to my plate here. Take my parchment paper off. And I still have my coconut milk, so I'm going to take it and brush each layer with a coconut milk. Keep it nice and moist. So, and I'm going to go add a little bit to this layer. Spread it on. That's pretty. So I'm going to spread it out to the edge. are done with the Lane cake. Let me show you what it looks like. There it is. I got it wrapped. It'll sit there until tomorrow. Stumpy's already wanting to cut into it. And I said, absolutely not, because it's got to sit. The longer it sits, the better it'll be. But it's got a nice, fruity flavor with a little hint of the whiskey in it, or the moonshine, as we used. But anyway, there is a vintage old cake that my grandma used to make. It's one of Stumpy's favorite cakes, so I wanted to make it for Christmas this year, and we're going to enjoy it tomorrow. We are looking forward to eating it. So, thank you for joining me in the kitchen today on this cold, cold day. As Stumpy always says, a simple life is a much more enjoyable life. We will see you on the next video. Y'all take care.